Hey everyone, this is Steve Becker, Whiskey 9 Delta X-Ray Echo, coming from our Hamshack along with Kelly KD9LQW. And today's project, we are going to build a communication speaker out of an ammo box. And this is one of mine that I've completed. And you can do the termination any way you want, but oh, look at that beautiful hand stickers. And of course, hey, DX Engineering. Anyways, very simple, fun project to build. Rather inexpensive, all depends on how you elaborate you want to get. Doesn't require armchair engineering. Very fun little project. You can take this anywhere. We'll be back from the workbench to show you how to build this. Hey everyone, we're back from the workbench in the shack. And here's our ammo box that we're going to build our speaker from. You can find these anywhere, Menards, Harbor Freight and so forth. Really economical. The speakers that I'm using, I have a gross of them that I found that came with the wiring harness. I did have to remove the speaker plug because it was the wrong type. From home, or if you buy it, you can use standard 18 gauge speaker wire if that works good for you. Again, you can use what you might even have something on at home. Some sandpaper. When you're done drilling and cutting your holes, you'll need some sandpaper to file down the edges, preferably on the inside to not mar up the face. If you can find them, or you don't need to use them, but this is what I had a few of these laying around, found at a swap meet, and these were for home stereo speakers. And those are spring-loaded terminals, and you'll see that the one that I just showed you at the beginning of the video, that's what I used when I first built these. In the backside, you can either crimp connector or solder. I prefer solder. Vibration, wires will come loose. Bag of hardware. You'll need a certain length or type of screws. Just one example here, and these are obviously too long, but 10 by 24 by ½ inch is what I'm using, ½ inch in length screw. But screws like this and assorted nuts, and you'll need 4 of them, 4 of each, to mount the speaker to the box. And again, under $1 for most of your hardware you'll need. 1/8 inch speaker jack. That's the common thing used on any transceiver or receiver, or even scanners. Use that same type of little plug. You can buy those off of eBay or Amazon. Relatively inexpensive, unless you know of a Radio Shack. Might even find an old speaker laying around that's dead, and you could take the cord and plug off of it and do the same thing. Few pieces of heat shrink tubing, we'll need that. And there's some extra different types of small nuts and screws that you could possibly use. It all depends on what type of speaker and what type of grill you have. Either a grease pencil, commonly used for metal work, or a real fancy Milwaukee fine tip ink marker pen. And this you want to do especially for marking your speaker hole and the 4 mounting holes. You'll want the black tip marker. Seems to work really well. Good set of drill bits, and there's probably only 2, maybe 3 that you'll need, but a good set of sharp drill bits, nippers, stripping pliers with cutters on them. You might need just a little piece like from a whip antenna or something, just for dabbing on the flux on your terminals, because you'll have to solder at some point. And a good cordless drill, or even a corded drill you could use, as long as you got good bits. That's the big thing. And if you saw it, and this is my choice, saber saw, or jigsaw it's called, and this is a variable speed. And what's really handy is when you drill these boxes out, I did on each side, I drilled a pilot hole large enough to fit your hacksaw, your saber saw blade, to get down in there. But you want to do a low speed, because that plastic will jump bad and you could actually damage the case. But I did a slow to variable speed. Just make sure that you got your shoe is square when you're cutting. A good build list. You might, a good thing to keep on hand. Start it off. What am I going to need? Wire, type of speaker plug, soldering equipment, different screw components, so forth. But that's something I wrote up just to kind of keep on hand. Like I said, typically you only need 2 different drill bits for doing this. But once you have this, you got all your equipment laid out, your soldering station's ready, and you got your box all sanded down nice and neat and clean on the inside, then we're going to start mounting your speaker on there. We'll get this jigsaw out of the way. Now, as I found with mine, you'll need a wrench, possibly a wrench. You probably won't be able to fit a nut driver in there, so these here are 9mm. And lay everything out. Hopefully it doesn't blow away. And here's your speaker plug. And here's another thing too. Depending on how you want to run it, you might just want to drill a hole through the side and feed your wire through when you're done. That's a wire loom grommet, commonly used in vehicles. And it does have a lip to it, so it might be snap that right into the case and just feed your wire through there. So first of all, we're going to get the speaker mounted. And what I'm going to try
to... You want to tell us about what you did there first?
Oh, sure, the termination. Now, these are I found at a swap meet, and these are used for power supplies or speakers, and I chose to use one of these little gems and drilled it out. I took this does come apart, and you can see the inside of it there, so I used a backing plate for reference, marked my holes, drilled them out, same thing, hand sanded down a little bit to get the burrs out of there, clean everything out, tighten it back down. Now I will be separating this wire, so there will be a link going from the speaker approximately 6 to 8 inches long, where I will cut this, separate it, tin the wires, and solder those to those 2 points. Okay, before we get into the cutting and nipping of anything, now, not all speakers are the same, so your application might be different. Mine, actually, these come apart and have little tabs on the back side to lock in to these little tiny grooves in these speakers. So what I did, laid it just like so, and I pre-measured the top of the box. Try to get center with that, center with your mounting template, and using your marker, measure out the inside of it, mark off the inside, and then your 4 holes. And once you have those and you can clearly see it, what I did was at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, I drill a pilot hole large enough for your saber saw blade to drop down inside. Now when you're cutting this, you got this all marked and you're happy with it, and you're ready to go on, and you got your 2 holes drilled out, you walk along with your jigsaw very gently around this cutting. Stay on the line. Like I said, I like using the variable speed jigsaw because one goes on and off. It's everything right now or nothing, and you can make a mess out of things. But when you cut the bottom, it's very simple. It's when you get to the top, and I'll have to grab the jigsaw, you will have to watch. You notice you have to keep your shoe above and right on this. So you have to cut the very top portion very slowly. And again, mind you, you're going to be about a 1/4 inch away from the box. So you're going to have to do it slowly. Just take your time and cut along the line. And once you have that all off, that piece out, you take your piece of sandpaper, file down on the inside, sand it down, get all the burrs off of there as much as possible, especially around your screw holes. Now, and we're done with our marker, we can put that away. We're going to mount our speaker in place using the supplied hardware. And this gets a little tricky because you don't have a lot of hand grip. If you got big hands trying to do this inside, you're going to find your hands are going to fumble around a little bit. So what I'm doing, and you don't really have to measure it, but I want to leave a little extra. I'm going to just go hold my finger down and cut right in there. Doesn't have to be precise. Remember, this is a fun project. You don't need to incorporate armchair engineering into this. Have fun with it. And we're going to strip those back a little bit. And then carefully strip, and we're going to get these. And it helps to have a good pair of strippers. These things have seen a tremendous amount of use over the years. Just be gentle with it. This speaker wire is really soft and pliable. You could almost nick the sides with your fingernail. But I always twist them. I'm going to take a little bit more off the hot side. Keep it twisted, keep it tight. There you go. Just like that. Now, your speaker, this one in particular, will go inside. Now, this already has strain relief, so you don't have to worry about the wires getting pulled. What I do is I want my terminals facing downward. And this is where it gets, this is the fun part. Oh, you cannot believe the excitement you're going to have here is trying to hold 3 things at once. So we're going to take one screw. And it might help too if you got a grill like that. You can use a piece of like electrical tape and put it over one of your screws to hold it in place. We're just going to get one nut going in here. And I did not grab a screwdriver, did I? No, I did not. So we're going to grab a handy dandy screwdriver off our craftsman rack. Just get it started. Now these speakers came with an extra plastic bushing. You don't really need them. I found it's actually a little bit better. With these, don't even mess with them. It's not going to change the dynamic range of your speaker whatsoever. Get started. Always remember to be careful. The last thing you want to do is poke a hole in your brand new speaker that you spend so much money on. Go on to the next one. At some point you might have to tip it just a little bit. Just like that, cheese right through there. Now these speakers do have a little bit of a lip on the back side, so trying to get the nut started can be a little bit of a hassle. Need to, you might actually end up having to trim one corner of the speaker off when you're trying to get your nuts in place. Like I said, these things are a little bit of a trick to get started because of that little lip on the back. Let's get one going there. Nut. A lot of times all I'm doing, if you can't see inside there, I'm literally just holding the nut right on my finger like that, flat, right against the shank of the screw. You can get it started and gently hold it in place, and if you're lucky, and I did, those set right in there and I didn't even need my wrench yet. Wrong. That was not a mine. There's my 9. Just gently. You don't have to crank these down super tight. Just get them good and snug. Walk around to each one and tighten them up. And there you go. And then you should be done with your wrench. Put that back on the rack. We'll leave our screwdriver out in case we need it. Now, the fun part. We are going to do some soldering. This is just an old piece from a whip antenna. It's all that is. It's just a little piece of stinger. You could use a little brush they make for soldering and whatnot, but that's all I'm using as an applicator. You get a good amount of the golden amount on there, and we're going to go right down inside there. Now I've already sanded these contacts off to help with the solder flow. And it might be a little bit overkill, but you know what? That's okay. Then we'll bring up our wires. We'll add just a little bit of goodness to those. Happy little wires. Okay, then we'll go to our handy dandy soldering station. Get just a little bit of solder on there. And we're going to tin our wires, and I'm not going to go quite all the way down. The magic smoke. We've all seen this. Just like that. Remember, it's hot. Now make sure when you're gonna make your connections next. Which one? Your copper wire is your hot, your silver wire is your ground. So we're gonna very gently go down the side here and wrap that around. Pull just a little bit extra out. Just bend it right over top, just like you're doing a horseshoe. And we're going to do just one to begin with. We want to make sure that little rascal really takes off home. And when we're done, we're going to get out our handy dandy multimeter and we're going to test our circuit. Nice and tight, and go on to the next one. There's different ways you could go about this. Kind of hard to see everything with my big hands down in the way, but such is life. And we're going to give, just in case, just an extra little dab of golden goodness on the wires down there. And just for I've got to see what I'm doing here, so we're going to get down in there with the, come down with your flux or your solder, probably right up on top like I'm doing, and let her feed right down in. Okay, out of the way, we're going to check. Yep, we're nice and tight. Now, I'm going to grab my multimeter. We're going to do a continuity test. We want to hear that. That's goodness. So we're going to test our hot side, stick in that lead, and then the back side and go back. Hey, guess what? We got connection. We got connection. We are good there. Shut your meter off. that is done. Now, this is where your handy dandy little piece of foam rubber comes in. And this is grooved just enough where it fits right underneath my terminals and it's not going to cause a problem. Lays right in there nice and flat just like that.
Why are we doing that, Steve?
That just gives a better acoustic. Some of these cases, because they're plastic and it's small, will have a hollow sound to it. This will deepen the tone of the speaker, really give it a nice sound. We're going to snap that on there. We will next apply our speaker grill. And these ones got fancy little tabs to them. Now, if you get into something like this, and I've encountered with these, if the grill doesn't want to sit in there tight, if it doesn't want to stay on there properly, we're going to apply just a little bit of Stick You Bastard. And this is Loctite Super Glue Gel Control. And you might need to go, and I've done these with mine, I've put just a little dab in the top and bottom. You don't want to overdo it, because if you ever got to take this off, you know, you can just take an X-Acto knife and slowly cut that little glue seam off and you're done. I got lucky. That one's working just fine. So now we're going to do our terminals. It's always so much fun. And again, you can use whatever length of speaker wire, be it if you want 3 feet or 30 feet, that's totally up to you. And we're going to need possibly a couple little pieces of shrink tubing. So what we'll do first, now you're wondering, what's he doing that for? Well, when we do our terminals here, I'll slide that up and heat it to keep the wires from possibly getting pulled apart. And again, about an inch and a quarter, somewhere in there is just sufficient. Doesn't have to be a whole lot, as long as it's happy. We'll move that out of the way. And we're gently, very gently going to strip our wires. Now mind you, most common communication speakers are 8 ohm. These are 4. These were a deal. Got them. They sound really, really nice. So you don't have to be elaborate. You can use just whatever you can find to make. And in fact, I've found certain CB radios, and there we go with eye rolling. Some of the larger, like Cobra and Uniden CB radios with a larger case, commonly come with a 8 ohm 5 watt speaker that really got good sound, and you can incorporate a speaker like that if you find one in a junk pile. Don't look, oh, it's just a CB. Well, that speaker could be of use. And it'll save you some money versus buying something off the internet, unless you like spending a lot of time on there. So we're going to flux our wires really good here. Give them a little bath of goodness there, the golden goodness. Use just a little bit of solder. We're going to tin our wires. And I like to hold them up, because it gets it to flow real nice. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Dab them once more. There you go. You've just tinned your wires. Always a handy little creation. Now, I don't have a lighter in my pocket, so we're going to just try to use a little bit of heat in the soldering iron here. And gently slide across our heat shrink tubing without damaging the wires. Mind you, that's hot. Obvious. So we're going to go and attach our wires and these commonly have a hole drilled through them from the factory. Really nice. If you don't, you can always wrap the wire. You could even take a crimp connector, loop connector, and solder it. I highly recommend soldering because the wires can get pulled out. Always solder. If you're doing crimp connector, solder that wire. Gives a lot better circuit. See? Just like that. Doesn't have to be fancy. Practical. Fun and practical. Now we're going to do our speaker jack. Again, these you can buy Amazon, eBay, DX Engineering, whoever. It's just an 1/8 inch mono, M-O-N-O speaker plug. We're going to take the jacket. We'll slide that back. Mind you, make sure you put that on right because one end is threaded. You know, my camera gal's really having fun with this. I can tell by the excited look in her eyes. We're going to slide that all the way back. You know why? We don't want nothing to happen to that. Worst thing apart about is you're soldering this together, that slides down, gets cracked. And then what do you got? You got hurt feelings. Well, we're not going to have hurt feelings. So we're going to strip that back just a little bit. Now mind you, your hot lead is going to be longer than your ground lead. So what I will do with my ground wire here is I'm going to nip off just a little bit. Again, this is fun, not rocket science. Don't have to critique it. We're going to take this little gem here. Now I'm going to keep that handy because that we're going to slide over. When I'm done soldering, that little piece of heat shrink tubing is going to go over that pin to isolate it. Not because it's been a bad wire. I'm going to strip back just a little bit. Doesn't take much. You can do, I've got helping hands there. When I do, you can use those, or you can do it freehand. I've suffered enough in my life. So we're going to dab it into flux.
What are you dabbing?
We're going to dab end of the wire into the flux. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread a little schmew, as we call it, the golden schmew, over that connector, that pin. Because when you stick your wire through and you bend that back, that's how I do it. I always bend them back. Now, you adjust one little extra amount. This is why. The wire won't pull. It's secured. And when you go to solder it, it stays in place. Oh, the golden smoke. Maybe just a little more. A little more happy solder. Now, if you can see in the camera, we got a nice little clean solder pad there. Isn't that pretty? Now, what you can do, that little extra, yep, just a tiny fragment off. Then we'll take that to isolate it. And again, book of matches or an old Bic lighter works wonders, and I did not grab one out of my other soldering kit, so we're just going to use a soldering iron. Why? Because it produces heat. So, got your hot wire connected. It's isolated. Now we're going to strip back the ground wire. And give it a little bit of flux. And you want to do a little bit on the wire. Just brush it on there. Don't need quite that much schmew. Now, what I do also is I do the inside of the pin. Decent amount. Both sides. Might be a little bit overkill, but that's the way I am. Now, what I'll do is I will stick that through. And I'm going to bend this wire back just a little bit, get it right there. We're going to bend it over. Now, very, very gently, we're going to bend these little tabs over. Now, these little tabs on there, if you can see that, I'll get my little handy-dandy poker thing here. Right there. Those are little tabs you use. That's for strain relief. That's to hold your wire in place. So we're going to bend those over. Give her a good squeeze. Now you got your wire on there, your ground wires on there. Probably rubbed a little bit off with your finger because I'm not using my little trusty helping hands today. And then what we'll do is I'm going to try to hold this Right in there. And we're going to apply some solder. Ah, the magic smoke. Now mind you, there's that little hole in there. You want to fill that. Just like that. Nice, pretty little soldering job there. Mind you, it's hot. But there, you filled in that hole. The wire is soldered right directed to it. It won't come loose. Now, you can pull your wire back. Double check your work. Everything looks clean and neat. So we're going to gently push this together. Screw that back on. And voila. And that's not going anywhere. Now, what are we going to do last? We're done with the soldering station, we hope. So we're going to shut that off. And we're going to get out our trusty fluke meter. And we're going to do, we want that sound. We want to make sure that everything is kosher with the world. So we're going to go do the hot pin, because there's your little black insulator in between. We're going to hold it just like so as I do. And we're golden. And then we're going to go to the negative side. And we're golden. So now, I'll shut off my power supply, or my test meter here. And we're going to head over to the bench. And we're going to hook this up to a Kenwood TS50 HF transceiver. And mind you, right now I've got an external speaker plugged into it. It was an old Sony speaker that we use for surround sound. It sounds good. We're going to unplug that speaker so you can listen to the internal speaker versus this. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, Steve, W9DXC. We're back at the helm. We're going to plug in our new speaker we just made. Here's our Kenwood TS50 HF transceiver. This is that Sony speaker I was just talking about. And that's got good sound. What we're going to do is I'll unplug that speaker. And the bands are busy today. That's factory speaker. Now we'll plug in our speaker and see what happens here.
And of course, there was no need for me to upgrade. How do I say this? No need for me to change the top line. But anyway, I'm sure you have an interesting story too.
Well, these speakers I've got a nice, deep, rich sound to them. And again, that's a small box. This is a large one from. This box came from Menards.
But 3 years I'd go there all the time, and sometimes he'd let me
but there's your fun little project for the day. You're sitting at home, you want something to do, you want to improve your shack or your portable goal system, and these are just a fun little deal. Plus it gives you a little extra storage space if you've got extra cables or whatnot. You can always, Ziploc bags work wonderful, or even tool pouches, zipper tool pouches from Milwaukee and so forth. Fit them right in there. But that's it, folks. There you go. Fun little project. No big hassle. Doesn't require armchair engineering. Just something simple, basic that anybody can do. Everyone have a good day. Be safe out there. Steve, W9DXC, adios. Happy trails.
for the technician.